Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with this week in cannabis news from May 17th to the 23rd. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back and rewatch. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes, learn about how the industry has evolved over time, and then identify some companies that you think are going to do well in the long run and take advantage whenever you are ready. And in anticipation for Memorial Day long weekend, which will come in the US next week, Akerna is predicting sales of cannabis to reach $238 million, as adult use and medical cannabis are predicted to peak on Friday, May 28th, as Americans prepare for the long weekend. So Memorial Day weekend will be high grossing for the cannabis retail industry, with approximately $238 million in adult use and medical sales over the 4 days, from Friday, May 28th to Monday, May 31st, with consumers and patients under the age of 40 age group driving 61% of sales. Historical data shows that Friday, the first day of the holiday weekend, will bring in the highest sales with a predicted $85 million this May 28th, up 55% from average Friday sales. Now, Memorial Day weekend has typically been one of the top 10 sales days each year, making planning inventory and staffing for the weekend critical for dispensaries and retailer success. Said James Arendt, business intelligence architect at Akerna, "We correctly predicted a $370 million value for this year's 420, or $370 million plus value, a testament to the power of our data analytics, which is based on over a decade of legal cannabis sales, and are confident in our values for this upcoming holiday as well. Through leveraging data-driven insights, cannabis businesses can make strategic predictions and decisions for their businesses." Now, I covered this in April. Obviously, we hadn't seen any results, so it's very nice to see that they correctly predicted what they were saying last month. So Saturday, May 29th, will be another busy sales day for the holiday, with a predicted $67 million in revenue, and Sunday, May 30th, is expected to bring in another $42 million. This is an uptick for Sunday, which is historically the lowest sales day of an average week, while Monday, May 31st, Memorial Day, is predicted to gross $44 million, a 9% drop from average Monday sales, but Monday is expected to be the slowest day of the holiday, likely due to consumer shopping ahead and enjoying the day off, as well as some store closures. So we'll see if they can correctly predict this Memorial Day sales, just like they did for 420, but that's always nice to see that Americans are planning to spend a lot of money on cannabis this weekend. On to the New York Times. Gotta love this headline as well. Yes, pot is legal, but it's also in short supply, depending which state you look at, as cannabis corporations are rushing to meet what is expected to be a tidal wave of demand in New York and New Jersey. Now, just to highlight, if you watched Wednesday's video, you came to more of an understanding as to how Canada became so oversupplied with cannabis, because we legalized at the federal level first and then allowed entrepreneurs and provinces to scramble, handing out licenses to anyone with a pulse, basically, then encouraging them to grow as much cannabis as possible. Aurora was aiming for 600,000 kilograms of cannabis, while Canopy was aiming for 550,000 kilograms. Then in the most populated provinces, we didn't open up enough stores so that you can actually, sell the cannabis and compete with the black market. So that's where we screwed up, and we can learn a lot from, looking at Canada in hindsight. But with the US, it's very different because they went state by state. So states are able to develop their own systems and obviously supply the demand as they go and not aim so large and just kind of see what happens. But just want to point out that there are many states obviously that have legal medical and legal adult use. But for states, I would imagine like New York and New Jersey, where they have small medical programs, but they're just about to open up to massive adult use, this is where there is cannabis in short supply, and that is why there's such a fight to get into these top states. So anyways, let's see what they're talking about here. The advent of legalized adult use cannabis in New York and New Jersey is an entrepreneur's dream, with some estimating that the potential market in the densely populated region will soar to more than $6 billion within 5 years. But the rush to get plants into soil and factory-style production facilities underscores another fundamental reality in the New York metropolitan region. There is already shortages of legal cannabis. Within New Jersey's decade-old medical cannabis market, the supply of dried cannabis flower, the most potent part of a female plant, has rarely met the demand, according to industry lobbyists and state officials. At the start of the pandemic, as demand exploded, it grew even more scarce, patients and business owners said. So it seems as if they're playing catch-up, which is better than overshooting and then having to crawl your way back, in a way. So The supply gap has narrowed as the statewide inventory of flower and products made from the plant's extracted oils more than doubled from March of last year and this spring, again from demand. Still, patients and owners say dispensaries often sell out of popular strains. There's very little stock, says Shaya Brodchandel, the chief executive of Harmony Foundation in Secaucus, New Jersey, and president of New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association. Almost no wholesale. As we harvest, we're putting it straight into retail. So Harmony purchased the former Merck site in Lafayette, New Jersey late last year and is awaiting permits to begin construction, Mr. Brodchandel said. And because cannabis is illegal under federal law and cannot be transported across state lines, like opposite to what Canada happened, it is federal, so you can grow it in one province, send it all over the country. Cannabis products sold in each state must also be grown and manufactured in that same state. Federal banking law also makes it nearly impossible for cannabis-related businesses to obtain conventional financing, creating a high hurdle for small startups and a built-in advantage for multi-state and international companies with deep pockets. Now, just on the contrary, Oregon, which issued thousands of cultivation licenses after legalizing cannabis 6 years ago, has an overabundance of cannabis. Sounds like Canada, right? But many of the other 16 states where non-medical cannabis is now legal have faced supply constraints similar to those in New York and New Jersey as production slowly scaled up to meet the demand, which is probably a better way to do it. Slowly scaling up as the demand increases, but obviously if something overnight like legalizing an adult use market, then there's a lot of work to be done. There's always a dearth of flower in the new market, says Greg Rochlin, chief executive of the Northeast Division of Terra Ascend, a cannabis company that operates in Canada and the United States, and this month opened New Jersey's 17th medical cannabis dispensary. Think about that. Only 17 dispensaries to supply all of New Jersey's medical cannabis system. So much room for growth. In New York, where the medical cannabis program is smaller and more restrictive than New Jersey's, the menu of products includes oils, tinctures, and finely ground flower suitable for vaping. But the sale of loose cannabis buds for smoking is prohibited, and only 150,000 of the state's 13.5 million adults who are 21 and older are registered as patients. So a lot of room for growth there as well. With modest demand, there has been little incentive to boost supply until now, as adult use cannabis sales could begin within a year in New Jersey and in early 2023 in New York, industry experts predict. So just wanted to highlight that as there's a lot of room for growth, but again, emphasizing why the US is very different from Canada. But it's great to see both stories kind of unfold and learn from them as we go. On top of that, though, key chairman plans to file revised federal cannabis legalization bill in-house as early as next week. This was news. A key chairman plans to introduce the bill to federally legalize cannabis and promote social equity in the industry as early as next week in the House, and its text will contain at least two notable changes compared to the last version of the legislation, Marijuana Moment has learned. This news comes as advocacy groups eagerly anticipate the filing of a separate cannabis reform bill being planned by Senate leaders, which is supposed to drop this week. There's 5 business days for us to expect something, but it's great to see that the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement, the MORE Act, has kind of come back to life as it's disappeared over the last few months, sponsored by House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler. Cleared the chamber in a historic vote last year, but did not advance in the Senate under GOP control. According to an email thread from advocacy groups that Cannabis Moment obtained, it's set to be refiled as soon as next week with some provisions. So that is news on top of Schumer's planned cannabis comprehensive reform bill as well. And just to recap them, as we were heading into 2021, there were 3 cannabis bills we were paying attention to. The MORE Act, which would federally decriminalize cannabis and expunge past criminal records. The STATES Act, which would allow states to create their own cannabis laws without fear of federal prosecution. And then the SAFE Banking Act, which would allow banks to work with these cannabis companies, again without fear of federal prosecution. And then it would also allow these companies to uplist on U.S. major exchanges and remove their 280E tax burden. Sadly, the session of Congress ended, so then those bills that had passed previously in the House become void and they have to be introduced and pass again. Good thing the Safe Banking Act passed, but it's not the same one as old. Basically just saying that in politics, things change, and obviously we were anticipating, certain things that has changed and evolved to what we're seeing now. But better late than never for more to be introduced, as 4 sources familiar with the strategy also said their understanding is that Nadler plans to introduce the revised legislation ahead of Congress's Memorial Day recess, though a spokesperson in the chairman's office was not able to confirm details by press time. And the new bill would not include language that was added just before last year's House floor vote that would have prevented people with previous cannabis convictions from obtaining federal permits to operate cannabis businesses. Very fair. That was a contentious provision that appeared at the last minute and which advocates strongly opposed. And whereas the prior version of the MORE Act contained language to help economically disadvantaged people enter the legal cannabis market, that language is being revised to extend small business administration aid, such as loans, financial literacy programs, and job training to help people who have been harmed by the war on drugs pursue business opportunities in any industry, not just cannabis, which is totally a great cause and should be added in. So this was unexpected, but great to see. So we are anticipating something of the MORE Act to be introduced this week, on top of Schumer's comprehensive bill. Also, Natalie Fertig, who covers cannabis for Politico, announced that a new bill that instructs the FDA to immediately begin regulating CBD products as dietary supplements will be introduced by Ron Wyden, Rand Paul, and Jeff Merkley, which is ultimately just good so that we can regulate CBD and know that you're getting it from a safe source as opposed to getting it from the black market and not knowing what it actually is. Highlighting in 2018, Congress passed the Hemp Farming Act, which legalized the production and sale of industrial hemp and hemp derivatives, including hemp-derived CBD. However, in order for producers to take full advantage of the 2018 law and market hemp-derived CBD products in interstate commerce, the FDA must act, which 2.5 years later has failed to do so. In recent years, the public has developed a widespread interest in the production and use of CBD, one of the primary non-psychoactive compounds in the hemp plant. However, CBD remains in a regulatory gray zone, and consumers lack certainty that the products they purchase are of the topmost quality, from the highest quality producers, and are meeting standards required of other food and dietary supplement products in the marketplace. Currently, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act prohibits any new dietary ingredient, food, or beverage from entering the market if it has been studied or approved as a drug. The FDA has the authority to exempt items from the prohibition, but has yet to exempt hemp-derived CBD despite congressional action to legalize its production and sale. By exempting hemp-derived CBD from the prohibition, the FDA can regulate hemp-derived CBD like all other new dietary ingredients, foods, and beverages. So the Hemp Access and Consumer Safety Act would give hemp-derived CBD products an opportunity to lawfully be used in dietary supplements, food, and beverages under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which is a huge win for cannabis. Prioritize consumer safety, requiring manufacturers to comply with all existing federal regulations for the products that contain CBD, so that keeps quality high and doesn't make people fear what they're buying, and ensure that these products are properly labeled. So this is a big deal, and again, it's just a step in the right direction for government agencies that have been stalling in the past to finally start taking action. And then on top of that, cannabis industry should be represented by U.S. trade officials after legalization, top Senate chairman says. So as cannabis is federally legalized, it should be normalized in global commerce with U.S. trade representatives advocating for domestic cannabis business interests, Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden said on Wednesday. While that hasn't necessarily been addressed in legalization legislation that he's working on with Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker, the chairman said 1 in 4 jobs in the U.S., well, this is a wild stat, I didn't know this, revolves around international trade. Makes sense, though, and he thinks that the U.S. should be looking ahead to the days when cannabis becomes part of ongoing discussions that are conducted by trade officials. Now, I love that Ron Wyden is thinking this far ahead, but for the most part, just introduce your damn bill so that you actually get this done and you're still in power in order to make this come into play in the coming years. Anyways, Wyden made the comment at an event organized by the National Cannabis Roundtable and Leafly. Advocates and stakeholders have been closely following Wyden as he and his colleagues prepare to introduce a bill to end federal cannabis prohibition. The senator didn't quite reveal new details about the forthcoming proposal, but he did reiterate the 3 policy pillars it will aim to address. So again, we're going to see what they're talking about this week, but this is what the bill is supposed to cover. The first thing we've got to do is make sure that legalizing cannabis establishes an anti-racism policy. Cannabis criminalization, the failed war on drugs, disproportionately harmed communities of color, Black and Hispanic Americans, and that harm for Senator Schumer, Booker, and myself must be recognized, which is fair. The next priority is addressing the public health impacts of cannabis, Wyden said. That means lifting barriers to research to explore the plant's therapeutic potential, which, in my view, translates to taking it out of Schedule 1, descheduling, which is very important and very key, so we want to see that. And then third, of course, is the staggering economic impact of legal cannabis, he said. He referenced an annual report from Leafly that analyzes job creation in the cannabis sector, and the potential for further expansion and federal prohibition has ended. And you gotta love this, what he finished this off with. With respect to the economics of legalization, Wyden says he's especially interested in reforming a portion of the tax code known as 280E, which prevents state legal cannabis businesses from claiming tax deductions and credits that are available to other industries. Yes, I think 280E needs to go, and I'm determined to get that done, he said. I made it clear to majority leadership and Senator Booker that will be a special cause of mine. So let's hope Wyden holds up that end of the bargain. But ultimately, just wanted to highlight this, not going to go too deep into it. Really, what we just want to see is something introduced this week. So, obviously, I'll be back on Wednesday for an update and Sunday to cover whatever ends up happening, but very much looking forward to that. Now, on to a great article I wanted to highlight, and we're going to go through this one. Cannabis investors see over 100% returns. Now, this is from MorningStar, a very reputable global investment firm. And it does highlight how Canadian ETFs are topping charts at the 1-year mark thanks to the US. So yeah, we're going to pick this one apart because I think it's very, very much worth getting into. For their fix of high-octane returns, investors have been piling into top-performing tech funds from the likes of Kathy Wood at ARK Invest and Mark Schimmel at Fidelity Canada. But since the start of the year, it turns out cannabis investors have had some of the hottest portfolios. And if you take a step back and compare March 2020 to March 2021, my portfolio is a testament to that. Now, the cannabis sector continues to show its risk-on characteristics running through the ebbs and flows of the evolving situation, both sides of the border, and heightened equity market volatility. Note Greg Taylor and Nawam Butt, who head the Purpose Cannabis Opportunities Fund, MJJ, adding that the fundamentals remain robust as ever and continually improve. So cannabis investors who have been in the Canadian LP licensed producer space will be able to put the growth potential into perspective when looking at what's happening now with the US multi-state operators. Canadian LPs are trading at an average enterprise value to sales of 14.3 times sales versus the MSOs at 6.3 times sales, says Mark Noble, Executive Vice President of ETF Strategy at Horizons ETF, which runs the Horizons US Cannabis ETF HMUS, one that I used to own for Canadian investors. This valuation difference is staggering given that the top 10 MSOs are expected to generate more than $10 billion in revenue in 2021 versus $4 billion in revenue for the top 10 LPs. Higher, stronger growth. So reflecting the opportunities in the US, the ETFs from Purpose and Horizons have returned a stunning 157.42% and 136.36% respectively over the past year as of May 13th, 2021. That's in the realm of multiples when compared to some of the highest flying funds like the ARK Innovation ETF and Fidelity Global Innovators Class F. Beyond a year back, of course, both Wood and Schimmel have beaten U.S. cannabis strategies, and it aligns with the tendency for relative diversification to outperform over the long run. At the same time, U.S. cannabis is new, and for investors looking to get tactical with the possible satellite strategy, there's lots of runway left down south. Love to hear that. So, what's next? We think the U.S. has the highest potential and offers the fastest growth of any market. But the U.S. regulatory environment is murky, with individual states legalizing recreational medical cannabis while it remains illegal federally. Eventually, we expect federal law will be changed to allow states to choose the legality of cannabis from within their borders. We forecast nearly 25% average annual growth for the U.S. recreational market and more than 10% for the medical market through 2030, says Morningstar analyst Christopher Inton. 25% average annual growth rate for recreational cannabis through 2030? That's incredible. All three experts agree. U.S. legalization is a key topic that investors are watching. Not only is the possibility of federal legislation from Congress and the U.S. Senate on the table for 2021, but it would appear a lot of the upside potential of this is heavily priced in, particularly on the Canadian LP side. Taylor and Butt say they're really in favor of American names versus Canadian, citing U.S. policy progress at both state and federal levels with many catalysts ahead. At the federal level, they highlight the SAFE Act, which recently passed the House of Representatives for the fourth time and provides a framework for institutional money to enter the picture. While the old one did, it seems like the new comprehensive bill that Schumer's going to introduce is actually going to have the framework to allow institutional money to get in. We expect the Senate to continue deliberating on the act, but find confidence that an increasing number of Republicans show their support. At the state level, reform continues at a strong pace, with multiple states evaluating or passing cannabis legalization frameworks to take advantage of increasing tax opportunities and job creation related to the industry, notes Taylor and Butt, something that the U.S. really needs right now, right? So there are currently 10 state legislatures debating the legislation of either adult use or medical cannabis. Many of these states are expected to pass some form of reform within the year after states such as New York and Virginia implemented adult use legalization frameworks this year, even if that doesn't mean that they're going to start sales for the next few. Just wanted to point that out. But what are the risks? Got to highlight this, obviously, but I think the most important risk as an investor is your time horizon. Are you able to wait? Now, according to the analysts, the most important risk is the pace and status of legalization in the US, which determines when and where cannabis can be legally sold. If federal legalization does not occur or takes meaningfully longer than we expect, the impact on our fair value estimates would be significant, but I imagine that they're talking about the LPs more than the US companies, because think about it, the US companies are focused on executing and improving their operations in legal states, and although they want what's happening at the federal level to pass so that it makes their lives easier, they're really focused on their work and improving their fundamentals, so the longer things do take at the federal level, the more potential upside I see for US MSOs. Maybe not LPs, but that's just my view. Let me know what you think in the comments though, because I do want to have a discussion on this. Obviously, we don't know what's to come, but we are getting closer than ever. Now, on top of that, Taylor and Butt say problems could arise with any issue if the US government changes its mind or delays, but adds that it is the best chance in years for legalization. Taylor and Butt also mentioned companies struggling with plans as a potential risk, while adding that issues facing other hot stocks like cost inflation could be a non-issue for cannabis, highlighting undervalued for US MSOs at least. Noble says his primary concern for cannabis investors comes back to Canada. The high valuations on Canadian LPs is my primary concern about the industry, he says. There's potential for downward revisions on the LPs potentially likely to occur, particularly since it appears the pace of Canadian sales may not grow at the same torrid pace as 2020, when cannabis sales were buoyed by lockdowns and pent-up demand during the COVID-19 pandemic. Not sure if they're not accounting for the 120 stores opening every single month in Ontario, but I think that's something worth noting, and we're going to get to that in a few stories. But just to add, Taylor and Butt also acknowledge that even the US cannabis space has seen a bit of a sell-off as of late, but for different reasons. A lot of this downtrend for the US MSOs can be directly traced back to a massive de-risking through the hedge fund space following the collapse of Archegos Capital. Many banks pulled back on their prime allowances to hedge funds, which have been the major shareholders in the US cannabis space, they say. So this also highlighting that the sell-off is not retail investors, but it's hedge funds. They're the ones that can drive the price up. They're also the ones that can bring the price back down if they have to sell for compliance reasons. So again, highlighting that you're in solid companies, and it's not the companies that are doing badly, it's just the market temporarily valuing them at less than they really are worth. So risks ahead for the sector also bring us back to the nature of investing in high growth, high risk investments, whether cannabis or tech. Cannabis investing has proven to work for those who are patient, says Taylor and Butt. Headline news trends to mostly create noise in the space, but it's important to see through the challenges of the short term and focus on the fundamentals that will make the industry successful in 5 to 10 years from now. That is why I'm holding long, and I encourage all new investors to take your time, but do the same. Have the long-term outlook in mind. Now, if we jump over, this is a perfect visualization of what they just explained in that article of the de-risking from hedge funds. Don't want to dwell on the past. This is from Free Cashflow, a great tweet, a timely tweet, but it's clear U.S. cannabis went through a period of fuckery in the past quarter as big institutions came into new names and then exited said names. Look at 75% daily drop in, or 75% drop in daily volume from late March versus early April, clearing the books by March 31st, in my opinion. But this is foreshadowing what we could see in the future, because just think about how quickly they could rise up once big institutions are able to get back in. But if we look from January, February to March, all this volume driving the price up, and then mostly from mid-February down to March, was that same volume was selling their shares off, sadly. But if we look at this other perspective as well, imagine we didn't see it hit all-time highs and they just kept chugging along, we'd pretty much be at the exact same point. So for investors getting impatient, just know that, we're playing the market's game. The market doesn't care about our feelings, and it's not in our control what can happen. However, the main thing is just to know your business, know why you're invested, and hold out for the long run. And a big thank you to Todd Harrison for always providing us with these timely snippets from investor conferences, as this one's coming from Bloomberg Intelligence, saying that it is time for Altria to jumpstart the U.S. cannabis strategy. Is this foreshadowing as well? We believe Altria would be wise to acquire a passive equity stake in one or more MSOs to gain exposure to the surging market. Doing so could also help it gain leverage in marketing products through these distribution channels when federally permissible to do so. Doing so would also likely turn the share prices around, just like when Canopy got a $5 billion investment from Constellation Brands in 2018, and then a month later, Altria invested $2 billion into Cronos. Now, no doubt, it was very early for those companies to get into cannabis, but regardless, they did, and and we saw what happened to the share prices. Now, I just want to point this out. I can't speak for Todd, but for myself, I really do not want tobacco to get involved with cannabis. They've done enough harm to humanity, but obviously for investors out there, if you want anything to happen that's going to increase your share prices, this would be one of those moves. Now, on to Texas legislative changes. A bill to expand Texas's medical cannabis program started moving in the Senate, but advocates worry time is running out. With less than 2 weeks left in Texas's legislative session, an effort to expand the state's medical cannabis program gained new life on Thursday after weeks of outcry from advocates who said Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was blocking the proposal. The Texas House voted 134 to 12 last month to send House Bill 1535 to the state Senate, where it languished in the legislative purgatory for more than 2 weeks. Not ideal, when the people in charge are not doing their job. Patrick on Thursday referred the proposal to the Senate State Affairs Committee, but the bill still faces significant hurdles as it must advance out of the committee and receive approval from the full Senate by this coming Wednesday, the last day the Senate can take up the bill. So, this bill, though, was a great effort that would expand the state's medical cannabis program to include those with chronic pain, all cancer patients, and Texans with post-traumatic stress disorder. It would also authorize the Department of Health State Services to add additional qualifying conditions through administrative rulemaking, as current law requires the legislature to pass the bill to expand eligibility. So, again, this is sort of just a misplay by the people in power in Texas. So if you live there and you disagree with this, this is time for you to pay attention so that you make sure that people that do this do not get voted into power next time around. And on to Michigan, you love to see this display of real leadership as Michigan launches push to help people expunge past cannabis convictions. So, several Michigan law firms, criminal justice groups, and cannabis reform organizations have teamed up to form the Great Lakes Expungement Network to help people expunge records under Michigan's new Clean Slate law. Past criminal offenses can create unnecessary barriers to housing and employment long after someone has paid their dues to society, Josh Covert, the network's legal services director and partner at Michigan Cannabis Lawyers, said in a statement. Too many people have been harmed by cannabis prohibition, so we want to help them take advantage of Michigan's Clean Slate law and usher them through the approval process. Amazing. Actually reforming laws that don't work and helping get people through them so that you can rebuild the communities that the laws destroyed. Amazing. A University of Michigan study found that individuals who expunged their records experienced a wage jump of 25%, attained better housing options, and increased employment likelihood by 11%. But that same study estimated only 6.5% of those able to wipe their records clean did so within 5 years of eligibility due to costs and other complications. So the network aims to make expungement more accessible. Again, gotta love this. This is real leadership. We've only really seen this out of Illinois, so great to see it out of another state like Michigan. On to sales figures out of Florida. We check with the Office of Medical Cannabis Use. This is for May 21st, 2021. As we can see, active patients has increased to 561,000 up from 555,000. So that is an increase of another roughly 5,000 to 6,000 patients, although we have seen the number of physicians decrease a little bit. And if we scroll down just to see how sales went for all of the operators in Florida, Trulieve is back up to overselling a ton of cannabis. So obviously the ebbs and flows are there in any market, but I'm excited to see what they do next week as buyers in Florida prepare for the long Memorial Day weekend as well. But so it's great to see just that growth in Florida, like all the other states, is steadily chugging along. Now we're actually going to jump over to Canada. Since they finally released their March 2021 sales figures, it's great to see Canadian sales hit a new all-time high of $298 million, just surpassing their December record in 2020, and up a good deal from February 2021 sales of $262 million. Now, the one thing I really want to point out that's important is what the expansion and opening of stores in Ontario, our most populated province, has done, especially in the latest month, because they announced that they would open 124 stores a month in January 2021. So I don't know if they did that in January or if the first month that they opened 124 stores was in February, not 120 stores, was in February. But we do know is that with March, an entire month with 120 stores added, they jumped from 86 million to 103 million, and that is a big difference. So behind Ontario too, we still have Alberta, which is not the second most populated province, but it is the next province with the most surplus of stores to help combat the black market. And third behind them is Quebec still, which is sadly the second most populated province, but because they refuse to open more stores and want to keep it at 50 and keep their government monopoly, that ruins it for the rest of Canada and for the residents of Quebec. But just wanted to highlight that. So as we continue to see 120 stores open a month, I expect to see the sales growth led mostly by Ontario, but I think we can continue this on through the year. So that's great to see. And this article really just highlights the fact that opening more stores takes out of the black market. as Canada's legal cannabis market continues to erode illicit market share, according to Stats Canada. The gap between Canada's illicit and legal markets continues to widen. The latest Stats Canada data suggests household spending on adult use cannabis products in regulated channels grew to 918 million Canadian dollars in the final quarter of 2020, or Canadian $204 million more than the estimated amount spent on illicit cannabis in the same period. Spending on legal recreational cannabis overtook illegal transactions for the first time in the previous quarter, when regulated expenditures outpaced approximate illicit sales by 59 million Canadian dollars. The legal market benefited from growing retail operations in 2020, highlighting those stores opening in Ontario. For instance, the Toronto area, which leads Canadian cities in cannabis sales, experienced significant store growth. Toronto started 2020 with 7 regulated stores. Imagine that, for a city of 4 million people. And ended the year with 87. That increase helped boost sales from 17 million in January to 40 million in December of the same year. Regulated sales also benefited from a wider breadth of consistent inventory and an improved selection of products. Extracts and concentrates sales tripled between the start and close of 2020, ending last year with 324 million Canadian dollars in retail sales, according to Stats Canada. It was the first full year of sales for products such as cannabis vaporizers. So love to see that opening more stores is actually making a difference. And as Ontario continues to do so, we hope that maybe Quebec will eventually follow along. But nonetheless, that will help improve Canada's growth numbers. And it will be beneficial for the Canadian LPs that have the most market share in that province as well. Onto some LPs. Canopy Growth welcomes Martha Stewart as an official strategic advisor. Newly created role will leverage Martha's expertise across the company's portfolio of brands. So, not sure if you're investing in Canopy or not, but they are, doing whatever they need to do in order to get a return on investment, they think. And in this new role, Martha will expand upon her existing relationship with the company, leveraging her vast knowledge of product development and brand experience to provide the company with dedicated counsel ranging from product innovation to format development and strategic partnerships. Now, no doubt, she is someone good to invest in because she's done this all herself and she is a personal brand. It's just interesting to see, but they're definitely doubling down on the marketing and getting their product out there, and especially reaching older audiences using Martha to help do that. So good to see out of Canopy, and I'm very excited to see what their sales numbers are once they release those earnings on June 1st, which will not be this week, but the following week on Tuesday. Then on top of that, though, Aurora Cannabis files for stock sale, mentions U.S. acquisition possibility. Now get this. They say this, we're considering buying something in the U.S., but really what this action just does is dilute shareholders again. And this is hilarious because I covered Aurora's recent earnings, I think a week ago in one of my old videos, and I highlighted how every quarter they've just diluted shareholders over and over again, and they have just filed for a potential sale of $300 million in fresh shares, further again diluting shareholders. And whether they want to use U.S. acquisition possibility as an excuse, it helps ease the pain possibly, but at the same time, this is just bad management. Stay away from bad management. Now, on the flip side, though, I want to highlight a Canadian LP with good management, because this is what you actually get out of good management. Village Farms International announces normal course issuer bid for common shares. So what does this mean? Today announced on the Toronto Stock Exchange that it has accepted a notice filed by the company of its intentions to make a normal course issuer bid. And this would give them the right to buy back shares at some point. So the NCIB notice provides that Village Farms may, during the 12-month period commencing May 26, 2021 and terminating May 25, 2022, purchase up to 5 million of its common shares, representing approximately 5% of the company's issued and outstanding common shares, by way of a NCIB over the facilities of the TSX, the NASDAQ stock market, and or through alternative trading systems in Canada and the United States. Village Farms believes that from time to time the market price of its common shares may not fully reflect the underlying value of its business and its future business prospects. As a result, Village Farms believes that the purchase of its outstanding common shares may represent an appropriate and desirable use of its available funds. So what this does, if they buy back shares, they reduce the number of outstanding shares, which actually makes your shares more valuable. It's the opposite of dilution. So Village Farms looks to be reverse diluting their shareholders, which just highlights why you'd much rather invest in Village Farms and get in at a good price than invest in Aurora and get in at a good price. So that's it for Canada. Now, just wanted to highlight this article from Todd Harrison's Substack. As we go through it, there's a few things that I just wanted to include that are worth highlighting. One is this, as the U.S. opportunity is insane, but not because of what happened at the federal level. So I want to read this clip. Federal cannabis legislation update. During the meetings, Boris Jordan, who's the CEO of Trulieve, provided an update on the comprehensive cannabis legislation that Senator Schumer should be introducing to Congress later this month. And again, by the end of this month. So we've got 5 business days. Look out for that this week. The bill has been held up due to discussions with the FDA intended to make sure their involvement is not needed. In my view, that's descheduling. Love to see that. He believes the all-encompassing bill, so this is saying Boris Jordan believes the all-encompassing bill at first pass will include interstate commerce and allow the U.S. MSOs to uplist to a major U.S. exchange and access the U.S. capital markets, while also addressing social justice reforms and decriminalization. Cha-ching! That is what we want. Expectations are that such a bill would take 12 months to pass. Now, these are expectations, so we have to account for the possible delays. Welcome to investing. Senator Schumer wants a bill passed by next 420, though, so we have a date in time we can plan for, but will likely undergo many revisions that result in exclusions of large-scale leaps such as interstate commerce, at least for now. While the Safe Banking Act would likely pass in the Senate today, it passed in the House in April. Senate Schumer does not want SAFE to front-run his own bill that also includes all necessary elements of SAFE in it. The 3 questions remain: what can pass, through what means, standalone bill or attached to other legislation, and when. Now, this is a great tweet that I think is very true. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that the success of U.S. cannabis hinges on the movement at the federal level. I've highlighted this over and over. It doesn't. That's what makes me so excited. And I guess maybe allows me to be patient from the experience I have investing in this industry. But I just wanted to highlight what Todd finishes this article off with because it's very important to consider, especially for your own planning. This you should know or should, but if you don't, we spent last week talking about it and encourage people to read up, learn the space, and follow the science. This is one fascinating plant, my friends, and if our Intende still works, it's going to disrupt Western medicine before it's all said and done. We're trying not to overthink things. As shared in our monthly letter to investors that pubbed Monday, it's only natural to question your thesis when a sector drops 35% in 3 months, especially given the special circumstances that surround our space and the powerful agendas in play. While I can't speak to your risk tolerance or time horizon, a huge driver of our forward success will likely reside in our ability to ignore the noise, follow the fundamentals, and know that patience brings price, even if we don't know when. And that's a philosophy I live by too, and it worked for me and Afria, and I know it's going to work again, which is why I'm just preparing to hold long and be patient as much as we need to. Now, and also why I try not to set too many expectations, because if you don't set expectations, then they're not disappointed. But space isn't for everyone, actually, as several unhappy fund managers would tell you. So let's be thankful for the opportunities we have, choose our vehicles carefully, right-size our risk, and please, everyone, including myself, take a deep breath. By the time we get to where we want to be, the journey will have ended, and that kind of sucks. So enjoy it while it lasts. This is like a generational opportunity and once in a lifetime change for us to be a part of. Now, if you have not listened to this podcast episode of the Cannabis Investing Network featuring Boris Jordan talking about the importance of being the biggest, it's very worthwhile tuning into, just because Boris Jordan, who's a billionaire, a very successful man, he shares his vision, and you can just see how smart he is and how many years ahead he's thinking. And so if you're a cannabis investor, this is a very, very good podcast to listen to. It will give you reassurance as well that you're in the right industry and that this industry has so much potential, despite all the noise that might come and pass your way to scare you out of holding in the long run. So just wanted to highlight that. Very worth listening to if you have not. Secondly, from Normal, coming soon, a Senate bill to end cannabis criminalization. Again, this bill is literally supposed to drop this week. How exciting. It's like Christmas, like the holidays. And sure, there's a lot of uncertainty with this because we don't know how it's going to be received or what's going to happen, but all we do know is that this is one catalyst that we've been waiting on to drop, and it's supposed to drop. So if you are worried that it might not happen or that delays are going to just continue and that we'll never get this done, please send a message to your senators right now to ensure that they will work with this coalition to move this important legislation forward. In the final days of the 116th Congress, House members historically voted to approve legislation, the MORE Act, which they did last fall, repealing federal cannabis prohibition. It's time to build upon this momentum and work with Senate leadership to advance similar language in the upper chamber and ultimately to the president's desk. So if you are American and you want this done, use your voice, because again, a letter from one individual usually is viewed in the eyes of a politician as representative of 10,000 in that constituent or in that community. So if you want this done, please raise your voice, as it goes much further than we're often led to believe. And lastly, for a portfolio update, because I figured we only have about a week left before Schumer can announce something. So again, the further Cresco drops, the more likely we're never going to see this price drop ever again. Therefore, a great opportunity for me to buy more shares to reduce my average price so that in time when the trend does reverse, my shares will be worth much more in the future. That's the same strategy I used for Afria. Put all my eggs in one basket and watch that basket very freaking closely. I'm doing the same with Cresco, putting all my eggs in one basket, watching that basket very closely as they continue to execute on the ground. And again, they're just the MSO I chose based on the market cap at the time that I first started buying based on the future growth potential. So as you can see here, I ended up selling some of my Kirkland Lake Gold shares, 31, leaving me with 100 shares. So I trimmed a bit of that, and then I set a buy order for 121 Cresco shares. And look, I just got lucky again. I could not have timed this any better, but at some point in the day, I sold it, and then I set the buy order, hoping that it might drop a bit further. If it didn't drop further, for me, that was fine. I was just going to wait until Friday and buy. But so regardless, it triggered, and it's just amazing to see that I actually hit the low on the day of Thursday. But obviously, Friday to end the week, it did drop a little bit lower. And that's okay, because here's the way I view it. This past week was like the last bit of buffer room before, again, Schumer introduces this bill. So as of right now, I do not plan on making any more changes. I've gotten my Cresco shares, I've gotten up to 2,134 Cresco shares, so I'm very happy about that. And I've gotten my average price down from like 19 something to 16.83, so also very happy about that. Now, here's the way I view it. What if Schumer doesn't drop something this week, or what if that gets delayed? That's possible, but like earlier on in this channel, we were anticipating Biden to potentially win, and we were anticipating the Georgia Senate runoff. And I was putting my neck on the line saying that the Dems could actually flip the Senate, and that all happened. And then over this period of time, even as we hit all-time highs, we saw the sell-off, and New York was supposed to legalize. In anticipation, we weren't sure if New York was going to get it done, but they came in on time, and they hit the deadline, and New York legalized. We didn't see any sort of price action based on that, but that doesn't matter, because what happened needed to happen. New York legalized. So I feel like we're in the same boat. This week is going to be amazing. We're going to finally see what's in this bill, which will give us, a much better outlook for the next few months and the rest of the year going forward. And so on top of that, I just want to highlight that I do not plan to make any more moves. However, if on Monday or Tuesday, Cresco falls even below $13, I might sell all of my Kirkland Lake Gold shares and just go 40 grand into Cresco to try and get my average price down into 15. I might, because eventually in time when the trend changes, I will make a lot more money. Now, here's the thing. I don't want to over-risk myself. Like, I want to be diversified, right, in different companies. But I'm just pointing that out because what could happen this week? Lots of possibilities. That now with Gerald Nadler, he might introduce the MORE Act on Monday or Tuesday, and then Schumer could introduce his comprehensive reform bill any day this week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, on top of Cresco earnings, which will come on Thursday, which I imagine Cresco is going to do just as good of a job in their own business as the other MSOs have done in their own business. And so that way we're going to see, hopefully on top of some introduction, a nice earnings release that might help. Regardless, I am very happy where I am now, so I do not plan to make any moves. But depending what happens early Monday or Tuesday, I would be very tempted to move even some Tilray into Cresco. So just sharing with that. But I hope this helps share with you all that, if you've bought in at a price in a good company and you see the price drop, but everything in your judgment and all the research you've done tells you that that's a good company, this is one of the dilemmas of investing. But you can buy at a cheaper price to bring your average cost down. And although it's difficult to do when your money is in the red, you're not investing for the day-to-day volatility, right? You're investing for the future price in 6 months or 12 months down the line. So just remember that. But just wanted to highlight, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm excited. What do you think is going to happen next week? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to have a discussion. And if there's anything I didn't cover in here that I missed, let me know. Otherwise, that is it for this week's episode, folks. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. Subscribe if you don't want to miss any future videos. And I will see you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great day, everybody.